Hi, welcome to the Sewcial Bee Designs. I want to welcome you all to our sew along video for our Sew for All slippers. I've been making slipper patterns for a long time, and if you guys have been following me at all, you know my perfect slipper pattern has been a huge hit. Well, the one I like this to fit. This fits like a glove, right? It's so soft and it's so cozy right to your foot that sometimes if you're wearing an insert or you want a comfier, roomier fit, I've created the Sew for All. So these are easy to customize for each person. The heel part is quite a bit thicker, quite a bit, if you look at the different side by side, it's quite a bit thicker, right? Ooh, where am I at? There we go. So it's higher. You can put an insert in there. You can add more foam. You can make it however you like. So let's get started. First, you want to print your pattern off, and when you're printing off PDF patterns, you want to make sure that you have everything set to print at 100% or original size. You do not want to resize this with your printer. It's very difficult. So when you print it, I've already got your sizes here, and we're going to go over that in just a second. But if you don't print it at 100%, your pieces are going to print quite a bit smaller. So let's go over to the cutting table and ironing station and see what we have going over there. And okay, so here you have your pattern printed out. Okay, so here's our pattern, and I have lots of beautiful pictures in here. You're going to absolutely love it. So when you get your pattern printed out, you put it together, and you attach the top piece here, right here. Attach here, attach here. Okay, you just put those together. You put your sole piece together. Easy peasy. Now, I like to go a step further. On my pattern, I do have where you can place it on the fold. I'm totally out of the camera, I'm sorry. Place it on the fold. Okay, you can easily do that. You can cut your fabric out by placing it on the fold. Although I like to pre-quilt my fabric, so what I like to do is take another piece of paper. This happens to just be another piece of copy paper to get the width. I taped it together. But I put this on the fold, okay, and created my piece. So, how do you know which size to cut out? Well, in your pattern, you're going to have sizes, and I'm going to pull this back up. Small, medium, large, and extra large. Okay, your small is going to make an approximate 5 to 6 shoe size. The pattern piece is 10 1/4 inches. The medium is approximately 7 to 8 shoe size. The large 9 to 10, and the extra large 11 to 12. Now, don't let this stop you if your foot is smaller or larger. Okay. The difference in shoe size is literally 1/4 inch. So if you're looking at the difference between a 7.5 and an 8, you're looking at 1/4 inch. So for a whole size, that's only, you know, a 1/2 inch or so, depending on your manufacturer and all of their good information there. But for me, I chose the size small. I know that works for me. I measure my foot out. In the pattern, it will give you exact measurements for each pattern piece, but that's in the that is in the pattern. So as I did that, I have mine that I cut out. Now, of course, when you cut out your sole, you're going to want to cut one face up and one face down. So you get the left and the right for each shoe, okay, or slipper. So what we need is we have our top piece, which I quilt, and I like to use Pellon FF77. You also have your lining and your sole, okay? So we are gonna head over to the sewing machine and start putting these together. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay. At the sewing machine, I like to have a Microtex needle, my beautiful thread. I use a Goodeman everyday thread. Okay, it's I think 35 weight. I don't use anything fancy. If you have Coats and Clark, that is fine too. For our pattern, I'm going to read the directions with you here. So the first step, and you're going to see this, the first step here is to attach our lining to the outer fabric. Let's do that together. So you just match your right sides together. Okay. And as you know, some of the things I'm not going to go over with. The more accurately you take your time to cut fabric out, the better results you're going to have at the end. I like to do a little bit of pinning just because we do have this beautiful curve here, and that's what's going to fit your foot so nicely. So let's just pin a little bit. When I cut these out, I like to use a rotary cutter, okay? So if you're not familiar with using a rotary cutter, I've quilted for years, so you know I'm comfortable with it. But you do have a lot more accuracy with a rotary cutter than you do with scissors. There's no jagged edges. Everything's neat and clean. So all right, I like to use, I really love this big foot from Viking. So it's an S foot. That's what I usually use because when I'm going around this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time turning it. I'm going to spend time turning it, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time clipping. I'd rather sew close to the edge now. So you can do a scant 1/4 inch. That's what I'm doing here. And let's see, I don't think it really matters, but whatever Viking defaults to, mine happens to be a 3.0 stitch length. I do tack backwards at the beginning and end, but if you look, you can get that scant 1/4 inch seam with this foot by riding your material right in between here at the foot. Let me zoom in there a little bit if you can, and see if we can get to it. But it rides right in there, and it's beautiful. It's so easy to use. Now, of course, you're coming up to your little V part here, and I like to go about the same distance, okay? And I'm going to back tack because what I like to do, I like to just take it off the machine, and I like to turn it just like this. and I'm gonna get interruptions, but I like to sew live, so if I make a mistake, you guys can follow along and not recreate it. So it's a little slower, it takes a little longer, but it's thorough. And in the pattern, we're in step 1 right now. And then I keep my Tula Pink snips handy. I like to snip as I go. So, one of the things that makes this slipper look so pretty is this beautiful V here. Okay, can you see that? And by coming up and then coming back down and taking that off, we actually get a really nice V like that right in the middle. Okay, so we don't have much of a seam allowance. I'm not going to trim the seam allowance at all. But what I am going to do is clip, especially on these curves here. I'm not clipping V's. I'm literally clipping into the seam allowance. Okay, and you definitely want to do that here at the, but don't clip through your threads. So, you know, kind of pay attention to what you're doing and don't rush. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and oh, it just drives me crazy when they just gloss over and rush the details. So if you're looking for fast and speedy, that is not going to be me. If you are looking for fun and interesting designs, that is going to be me. Okay, so that looks like our picture, right? It's so pretty right here. That's what we have. On to step 2. We're going to sew the back and the heel. Okay. We trimmed our seam allowance and we are going to press. So I'm going to take us back over to the pressing station. And we're going to press this out. Now this is the part where we're taking thin cotton and we're attaching it to the quilted piece. So there's a little finagling in here. And if you can get this spot right, you are going to have your slipper looking really good. And you have to stretch your fabric out just a little bit, and the right tools are going to help you tremendously. I use a little bit of best press, okay, and then to get a third hand in there, I'm going to use a glass head pin, okay, because this is where we want our, we don't want to distort it, but we definitely want to get our edges all pressed out really nicely. And I start from the back, just because you can manipulate the cotton fabric a little bit more than you can manipulate the quilted foam insert. So and you just use, if you use glass head pins, you can easily have extra hands holding your fabrics for you. And you just spend your time, take your time. This isn't, you are not, you know, we're not winning anything extra by rushing through this. So when you look on the front, look at how pretty that looks. Isn't that nice? That's lovely. I could grab a little bit more of this, right? And then pin. I can grab a little bit more from this side And just pull it a little bit more tautly, and then we're going to press it. Make sure it's all lined up. I happen to have a double stick fusible foam, and I really love working with that with the slippers because it's going to hold everything in place for us, especially when we get to the part where we're constructing it and adding the sole. We're going to take the pins out and we're going to give it a really good press from the back too. And then I use my clapper from Buck Rocks. I love my clapper. Really, I'll hold those nice. Get right in there. That's not a glass, so we want to get that out of there. And look at it. Beautiful, right? Just, isn't that gorgeous? So now we're going to go back over to the machine. And we are going to go to the next step where we line up our heel pieces. So if you do use the fusible like I do, then you're going to want to just pull it apart a little bit. It's still warm. So pull it apart a little bit and line up your heel. And take your time. Take your time lining that up, okay? Line up the seam. Throw a couple clips in there to hold it nice and sew down. And there is a curve to it. And if you want your heel to be a little stronger, I want this to be more flexible, but if you want your heel to be firmer, what you do is you add just a bit of interfacing here at this point. And I'm not going to do that right now because that's not how I want it. But okay, and you just sew that together. And then, of course, trim your threads as you go. It looks really nice. I have a little thread catcher over there. Okay, and then we're going to go back and we are going to open that back up. And then line it all up in there. Okay. If you need to press again at this point, feel free to. I'm really happy with that. I don't think I need another press at this point, but if you do, you get in there and press it. And then what I like to do is I sew on each side of, I'm not happy with that spot. Just take it back out. On each side, you know what I'm going to do is I am going to add, I like a nice line of stitching down the heel on each side. And of course, back stitch. Okay. And then I'm gonna move my needle. And this is just where I like, I like my stitching. You can put it closer if you don't want stitching down the edge of the back heel. You don't have to. It's all personal preference. That's why you're making your own slipper, because you can make it exactly how you prefer. Okay. And we're going to get our threads out at this side. Make sure you're back stitching. That's going to add such a huge amount of wearability and strength and long lasting. But here's your inside. Isn't that beautiful? Here's your outside. I think that top stitching just adds a really, really beautiful detail and again, if you use a beautiful thread, like you can see my thread matches my lining perfectly, and it really brings out that mustard color, and I just love that. Now we're going to do our top stitching along the inside edge. Again, if you don't like that, you do not have to do it, but let me show you the finished one and the difference. You can leave it like this if you choose. You can. But if you look at the finished detail on this one, it's beautiful. I really think that that's a nice detail. It takes it up a notch. So I'm going to do it. And it takes a little finagling in here. And I'm going to go like this to get it started, because you want to start it here. Okay. Which way do I like? I'm thinking of, I like to go this way. Okay. So, start it at your heel seam. And just let the machine do the work. When you're top stitching, that is definitely not the time that you want to run any kind of speed stories, because that's a finishing detail and you want that to be as lovely as can be. And then back stitch, and I'll show you what it looks like. And see, if you take your time, look at how beautiful that point is. That point is gorgeous. So you just take your time and you stitch that down. Again, I'm going to clip my threads as we go, but the key here is when you're making slippers, it is not time consuming, but it is better to take your time than to rush through it. So now we're going to add our sole, and I chose cork. I love working with cork. I also backed it with a piece of the flex foam, and again, this is fusible, so it will fuse. If you guys can see, it will fuse. And then what I do is I take my scissors and I grade that a little bit. And if you don't have to, but I do like to do that. So we did our top stitching, and now we're going to go attaching the top to the sole. Take your time. This is not the time to hurry. And if you need to adjust, always stop with your needle down. So we're going to fold our sole piece in half, and we're going to mark the very center of the toe with a clip. And then let me get some more clips out here. I'm just going to take them all. Okay. You can use pins, but if you have clips, it's much better. And then we're going to fold this in half and find our very middle of our heel, which is right here. Okay. Now we know the middle of our heel on this is going to be our beautiful stitching, and since it's exactly half, we know that our line in it, look at how our point is pointing perfectly towards that. And this is from not rushing, guys. So you want to clip that, right? And then right sides together, we're going to take those two clips and we're going to line them up and we are going to clip it. And then we're going to do the same to the back. Now, you can see that I'm bending the sole a little bit to get it on here. Why? Because there's ease built in. This is what's going to make your slipper comfortable. This is what's going to make it fit your foot. And then I come back and I go back and forth as I'm clipping. Okay? Back and forth. You don't want to just clip one side at a time. You want it to all be nice and even. And then come back. So I've got a few clips up front on the toe, and I'm going to come back and give the heel a little attention. Now this step here is why it's nice to have fusible. If you don't have a fusible, that's fine. It's really not that big a deal. What I use is some Elmer's washable school glue and disappearing purple. This will also help hold the layers down. So if you don't use fusible like I did, stick some glue in between your lining and your outer piece, and that'll hold it so you don't have to worry about keeping all of your edges aligned. Your fabric's gonna stay ready for you. And just work it back and forth. It's not hard. It just, you know, it's not hard at all. You just take your time. You could not have too many clips at this stage, so I do like to go back if I see where anything's moving at all and stop it from moving. Okay, I think that looks good. See how nice that looks? This is what you want it to look like. If yours doesn't look like this, then you need to adjust it a little bit. My heel's looking good. Right, my heel, right with the toe, all the way around. All the way around, it's looking really nicely. So, now we are going to now, again, I have this, and I'm lining it up with the edge, okay? It's just under a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You could go with the exact 1/2 inch that I have in the pattern, but for me, I really just love being able to align things with my presser foot. So that's how I'm doing it. You can do it however you want because these are your slippers, okay? And if you have one of the Mikey tools or the Everything tool from Buck Rocks, this is a really nice to have a third finger that if it hits the needle, it's not gonna hurt. So you just take your time, and you see how I have my needle in the down position. So every time I let off my presser foot, my needle stays down. And right now my slipper is pushed to the edge. I'm coming up to the middle, so I'm going to take the rest of the slipper and I'm going to fold it in so this part stays flat. That's what I want. I want this part to stay flat. Okay? The flatter this stays, the nicer your finished product and your finished slipper is going to be. and you have to keep adjusting it. That's just the name of the game when you're getting into all of these finicky areas. Okay, and just take your time as you go. Try to keep it lined right up. And when you're going around a curve, you want to keep the front of your toe lined up, okay? The front of the toe lined up with your fabric. Or whatever seam line you're using, but you keep the very front lined up with your seam mark, okay? And in my case, I'm using the front of the presser foot. And now at the toe, you do the same thing that we did previously in the heel. You want to turn your fabric as you're going, okay? And you want all of that extra out of the way so this stays flat and no puckering. Okay, we don't want pleats and puckers at the toe. You can adjust it, you can fix it, but if there's pleats and puckers at the toe, we will have to use one of our beautiful seam rippers and rip it out. And a good sign is, as we're back at the front, or back at the edge, we're at the start, and our stitching lines are lined up perfectly. I'm literally stitching on my original line. So that means that we did a very good job in... Okay, now I was talking, I'm wondering if I got a pucker at the top here, so I'm going to take a little peek before I turn it completely right side out. And no, it looks good. So I'm going to turn it back out, and we are going to trim the bulk just a little bit, okay? If you like your toe filled out a little bit, feel free to leave it, but then we're going to go back in and we're going to clip, okay? And you want to be real careful that you're not clipping through your stitches here. And I'm not going to go too crazy. Now the one spot I don't trim at all, I don't trim this back heel at all, okay? Well, unless I'm off, my fabric adjusted a little bit, so I'll even it up. But I don't trim this, and it's because this helps keep your heel stiffer, so when you're walking or you put your inserts in, it keeps your heel nice and stiff. And we're going to turn everything right side out. Okay. And I'm going to use my everything tool. This happens to be the Mikey tool, but I'm going to use my everything tool. I'm going to get right in there, and I'm going to get that pushed out beautifully. Okay. And then you can take your fingers and you can roll it to get that adjusted just right. Isn't that pretty? It's a nice rounded toe. And if your stitching doesn't, if you've got any clumps or anything like that in your stitching, you get a seam ripper and rip that out. If you don't like the shape, it's because you went too far out, or you were going too fast, or however the case may be. But we'll go back over and give this a good last press. Okay? So we're going to give it a good last press over here. And then I'm going to show you how we finish it. And in the pattern, it does give you the whole explanation. But we're going to make an inner sole. So now on this example, I'm actually going to have a couple layers of foam in here, which is going to make it extra comfortable. There, it's pretty. So what I did is you can, this happens to be this, this is the right foot, so I'm going to go this way. But this is the inner sole, and you take the sole piece and you make it just a little bit smaller. I trim off a little bit from the ends. I leave this kind of wide because I do like it coming up, so I leave it the same width as the pattern calls for. But I trim down just maybe a ½ inch off the top or the heel, whichever you prefer. And then you slip it in here. And there's foam inside that. And there you go. There is your slipper. So comfy, so cozy. There we go. I'm like, wait a second, that was the right. So, comfy, cozy. Anybody can make these. Anybody can sew these. And everybody will want them. So let's go back over here and do our finishing up. So, this is our Sew for All slipper. I am Jamie with Sewcial Bee Designs. Make sure you like this video. I think I'm going to put it on YouTube. I usually go with Facebook. Find us on Facebook. We do social talks and coffee chats every single week on Wednesdays, as long as life doesn't get in the way. Sometimes we have sick kids and whatever, but most of the time on Wednesday mornings, we are there. I also run the Sew It's For Sale Facebook group, so make sure you check that out. We have a lot of great items from amazing sellers all the time. So thank you, and you guys have a great day. Make some slippers and be sure to share them.